So, yep, Iraola's obviously had his first press conference for Liverpool in front of the people, speaking to the media. I haven't watched the full actual conference itself. I've just taken a few snippets that we're obviously going to chat about. You guys can see the thumbnail. Obviously Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott. I do believe he spoke about some other players, but again, I haven't taken a deeper look into that. But these two are the two players that I really wanted to focus on. So let me know your thoughts both on Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott. Where do you kind of stand with these two players? Should they stay? Should they go? Let me know your thoughts, and we'll get right into it in a moment. So, listen, obviously, him having that first press conference, I think one of the things that I always think about when managers obviously do these press conferences, right? Obviously, listen, look, he's coming at the end of the season, end of a disappointing season for Liverpool. Obviously, there's a lot of negative energy around Liverpool, especially at the moment with the transfer window kind of open and Liverpool not really doing much business. I do believe he has mentioned about Liverpool, doing business, getting some players in and things like that. And listen, it's always difficult. I always feel with first kind of not interviews, but first press conferences, because I guess everyone's looking for something, depending on who you are, what it is you're trying to, I guess, achieve by, hearing the things that he kind of said in terms of, do you want to hear a manager? I think, listen, ultimately, we all want to hear a manager, speak about, joining their football club and how great the football club is and, their aims and their targets and etc. But I mean, from what I saw, it's not a long, it wasn't long, but it's always difficult. Honestly, like I always think like it's kind of tricky, isn't it? Like you can't really please everybody. You know what I mean? Like you can't please everybody with, the things that you do say. There's going to be some people going to look at or hear this and, listen to what Iraola's obviously had to say, and they're going to have a different takeaway, I would say, from that in regards to certain things that he might have said and, the way that he spoke about certain players, specifically, obviously, Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott, his style of football, all these kind of various different things, right? I think people are always going to take different things away from that. And I think for myself, I think one of the reasons why I just didn't listen to it was just because it's not going to be anything eye-opening. If I'm being honest with you, I feel like snippets was enough. I feel like I can kind of gauge where his head was at, really and truly, other than anything really individual that he would have said. Again, in the comment section, you'll be able to tell me, and you'll be able to let me know of all of the little nuances that you guys liked, personally. So if there is anything that he might have said within that press conference that you liked, please let me know in the comment section, and I'll be interested to kind of know what it is. But I just think it's one of those, I don't really care what he had to say. I don't really care what it is that he's going to come in and kind of tell everybody, on day one. All of that stuff is irrelevant. Ultimately, you're coming into a job where at the moment it's a little bit up in the air. The club is in a weird space, I would say, both on and off the pitch, I think. Well, not so much off the pitch, but if we're just talking like in terms of transfers and the kind of direction. Michael Edwards, obviously he left, and everything that was kind of with that. I haven't really spoken about that, but I mean, Michael Edwards is gone now, isn't it? Like, in terms of being at Liverpool and all the kind of back the boardroom kind of upheaval that's obviously going to have changed. Does that change the aims of what the club were looking to do? Does that change the kind of targets that the club were looking at? Does that change how things are obviously done? If so, how, what exactly changes? Again, that's a different conversation, I think. But in regards to what Iraola, I guess he can kind of, control, I think always with these kind of first impressions, a bit like Slot, to be honest with you. When Slot came in, I didn't feel like that was a decent first impression. Do you know what I mean? Of someone we didn't know too much about. Now we know more about Iraola than we did with Arne Slot. So obviously there's going to be that, yeah, if you like him, you don't like him, you already have that preconceived notion, whereas with Slot you didn't really have anything about him, in terms of how much you liked or disliked him, because he was kind of an unknown entity. Whereas with Iraola, it's not really unknown, right? It's everybody has their thoughts about him. I think he's a good manager. I like him in general, like we did at Bournemouth. Whether he can replicate that, we'll have to wait and see. I'm gonna I'll probably sit on the fence if I'm being honest as to whether he could do that or can't do that. I don't want to judge him too soon. I think we'll wait and see as time kind of moves on, and as the season goes on. I'm more looking at him. I think all of this stuff I don't really care. I'm just more looking at what do you do in the bad moments? Like, how do you take things in the bad moments? Because we saw what Slot was like in those bad moments. We know what Klopp is like in those bad moments, right? So you ultimately take it or leave it in it here. Do you know what I mean? In terms of how you take to those kind of personalities. And I think with Iraola, you just got to come in, say the right things, and then you can just kind of, go from there. And it helps. Ultimately, these I might not care, but these things, I guess, they help towards the wider audience in terms of how they then take to the manager, right? In terms of whether you're taking him at his word, whether you're going to kind of hang on his every word, that he kind of says, whether you're going to take it with a pinch of salt, so many different things, right? So yeah, like I said, it's just one of those. But listen, we'll wait and see. I think right now, from what I kind of gather with Liverpool fans, we don't really care about all of the talking stuff. We just want to see what you do on the, out there on the field or on the training pitch and stuff like that. Do you improve players? Does the team look better? Is the team going to play better? Is it going to be better? Than what it has been over the last kind of season itself. Remains to be seen. But yeah, it's an interesting time for Liverpool. Really, really interesting time. So obviously, one of the things obviously was talking about was from the snippet that I saw, or I read, should I say? Sorry, not saw. I read it about Curtis Jones. He's obviously saying he hopes that we can, keep Curtis Jones. And with Jones, it's always a weird one, man. Honestly, like I did a video on Jones recently, talking about. I think it's back in April. I want to say. I think it's back in April. Probably more or less around the time when the news kind of broke out that Inter Milan, and I do believe that Inter Milan are still interested in Curtis Jones, and understandably so. I think that'll be a really good team for him to go to. I think it'll be a really good league, for him to go to. I feel like it's more his speed, more his kind of style in terms of it's more technical. It's more about foot on the ground, foot on the ball, kind of playing, within those kind of systems and the style of play and the tactics. I think it would work. And listen, Inter Milan are a massive, massive football club. So he's not exactly moving to a smaller club, so to speak. They're quite massive out there. So it's I look at this kind of move as I kind of look at it as more like a sideways kind of thing. Like you could put Liverpool a tad bit higher, but I don't think there's that big enough of a gap. Do you know what I mean? I think you're still going to be going to a very good league. You're going to be amongst some really good players anyway. Under a decent manager. I say decent, he's all right. Do you know what I mean? He's okay. I think it's with Chivu there. So listen, new style, new kind of culture, and everything like that. I think it'll be a good move for him. And to be honest, it's not even about trying to ship him out. I'm just like, you've been here for so long, and you have not been able to command a first team spot. I don't know what this conversation is going to look like with Iraola. Listen, he may be able to convince Jones. Listen, you're going to be a key part of whatever it is I'm trying to do here. If so, cool. Yeah, I'm saying like I'm really not bothered in that kind of sense. Obviously, he's only got 1 year left of his deal. Is it worth doing all of that, and he's going to leave anyway on a free? I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, and Liverpool seem to be okay with letting people go on a free recently. Maybe they won't care. Maybe they'll just look at it as we can't get the other targets in midfield. We'd rather keep a midfielder like Jones than letting him go now and then having to find someone just because, or potentially promoting a Trey and Yoni. As much as I would love to see that, is that what you really want to kind of go with heading into next season? Curtis Jones is an experienced player. He is someone who has played for England as well, one with the under 21s. It just hasn't worked for him at Liverpool. I'll be honest, it's just one of those unfortunate things. It just hasn't worked for you here. That doesn't mean it can't work for you anywhere else. You've kind of fulfilled your boyhood dream of playing for your football club, winning trophies with your football club. You are a Scouser, and I think that's something that Iraola mentioned as well about him being Scouse. That might be more the overriding kind of thing with this whole Curtis Jones thing, is that if he leaves, Liverpool ain't got no one, kind of thing in that first team who is a Scouser, after Trent obviously leaving. So yeah, it's how important is that, moving forward. listen, I think it will all come down to that conversation that he obviously has with a Curtis Jones as to how he sees him next season. Also, the interest from other clubs, whether it be Inter Milan. I heard Nottingham Forest potentially are interested in him as well. Aston Villa might be another shout. They've just sold Yuri Tielemans. Onana's obviously out injured. Morgan Rogers looks like he might potentially be moving on. I think Villa would be another good club. I just think any club that would allow for him to play consistent amount of games, I think is always a good thing. He's reached an age now where I'm not a bench player anymore. I'm not a player that's just going to sit here just because it's Liverpool and just stay there, kind of thing. I need to be, involved. I need to be seen as someone that you respect. And ultimately, if that can't happen here at Liverpool, I don't see the reason why he would, bother staying. So, yeah, we'll see. Obviously, it's one of those. Like I said, if he stays, great, cool. I've got no issues with Curtis Jones as a player anyway. So, be kind of calm to keep him. But it just depends on what kind of capacity he's happy with moving forward. But I do think if he is to stay, and the manager, would I say, quote unquote, goes back on his word in regards to if he tells him he's going to be an important part of the team and you're not, yeah, that will create real problems moving forward and also have a knock-on effect in the future. So let's just see in regards to Curtis Jones. But let me know your thoughts. Really do let me know your thoughts about Curtis Jones. Keep him, sell him, whatever. He's got 1 year left, so take that into consideration when you are thinking, man. Harvey Elliott is another player, obviously spoken about. Elliott is another weird one. Another weird one, because you just don't really know with an Elliott. You just don't really know, like, in terms of, I think when it comes to Harvey, like, I don't know, like, obviously he's Iraola saying he's gonna have a chance in pre-season. Again, I think that will be more down to whether or not other clubs are going to be interested in him, throughout the summer. I don't think it's just going to be as simple as, oh yeah, you have a chance pre, like, he'll have the chance, of course, in preseason. If that's what he said he's going to do, then cool. But I do think, again, he's more of a player that I would be more looking to sell. I just think that, one, I have no idea what his position is. Two, again, a bit like Curtis Jones, in what kind of capacity are you keeping him here? Again, you have been here for a little while, have never ever been able to cement a kind of place, within the team. Does that then mean that you're not going to be a player that is really going to get that place in the future? Obviously, Liverpool have now moved on. He reminds me more of like the Oxlade-Chamberlain thing, whereby you had a place, and I think you guys remember there was that beginning of the season. He started a few games under Jurgen Klopp, then got that mad injury against Leeds United, and then it's just been kind of whatever it is from there. Right now, not his fault, of course not. And I'm all here. I hear the given a chance stuff. I hear all of that, but when the team, I feel like, has just always has kind of moved away from whatever it is that you bring almost now. If you're talking rotation options, both him and Jones, you keep them. Of course you do. But that's from a selfish point of view. Do you know what I mean? That's from a fan point of view. I think from a player point of view, both of these two are probably looking at it and thinking, look, it's not like we've got Vitinha and, Joao Neves and, Pedri and De Jong and Jude Bellingham. We haven't got that kind of midfield. The midfield is quite average at best, kind of thing. So I should really and truly be playing in a midfield like this. I don't have 116 million pound Elliot Anderson. I don't have a Ballon d'Or winner in Rodri, in my team. I don't have a, World Cup semi-finalist in, in Declan Rice, in my midfield, alongside like the Zubamendis and stuff like that. So, you're looking at Liverpool's midfield. It's not the best of midfields. It's, like I said, it's quite an average midfield itself. I'm pretty sure both of these two players will be looking at everything and thinking, yeah, I should be, without being disrespectful, I should be commanding a place somewhat, within the team. It just depends. It really just depends on how they see it. I think these two players, it's going to more or less come down to how they want to fit into everything going into next season. What kind of a role is the manager going to give them? Are we going to sign players? Are we not going to sign players? And if you don't sign players, then you can use these two. Obviously, Elliot can play on the right-hand side. He can play, obviously, in the middle of the park, but in the number 10. He's obviously played more as a box 8 as well. So he can play in a few positions. Same as Jones, to be fair, but he can play in a few positions. at the moment, Liverpool have got no right winger. Does that mean maybe Elliott will get that chance out there on that right hand side alongside somebody else, to potentially throw in there? I don't really know who. Again, so many questions, and I think it's just really going to boil down to what the players want to do. I get it from a fan perspective. We're always talking about rotation, and we look at all these other teams, but ultimately, I feel like these other teams, they're quite set, and they're quite, obviously we don't know what Iraola is going to do, so I have to give him that benefit of the doubt, right? But a lot of these other teams, and I do look at more so PSG, Arsenal, Manchester City, and Arsenal, to be fair, haven't really done it too much last season, but let's say Manchester City and PSG, what they're really good at is rotation. Their manager, former manager in Manchester City, he was very good at just rotating the team. Some weeks Kevin De Bruyne wasn't playing. Some weeks Rodri, might be benched. You've got a Reinders, you've got a Nico Gonzalez. Like, you've got players who, yes, they might, obviously they're not of the level of those players that, who are starters, but ultimately you're going to have enough of a game time. When you're also very successful, it is very easy for you to be able to do things like that. That's one thing that I don't think people really understand, is that it's easy to have, I say easy, let me not say it's easy, but it is easier when you have a very successful team, PSG, Manchester City, to be able to just rotate. Players don't mind because they're constantly involved in high level and important games, throughout a season. When your team's not that successful, i.e., a Liverpool, then it becomes probably a little bit more difficult, in terms of, well, it's not like we're winning trophy after trophy after trophy after trophy, and we're constantly winning 3 a season. And, Manchester City had a quote unquote kind of a dead season and they still walked away with 2 trophies, kind of thing. So, that's the kind of level that we're talking about, in terms of those kind of teams. PSG won, God knows, I think everything last season. Again, able to just constantly rotate. You can do that. Again, I mentioned Arsenal before. They rotated, just not really enough, I guess, for some people's liking, because players like Declan Rice, players like Bukayo Saka, ended up getting, fatigued and stuff like that towards the back end of the season, kind of thing. But again, it's just really about what it is that they are willing to do moving forward. And I think if they are willing to just be a part of what's going on, I think, it will be fine. But again, it all comes down to them. It really, really, really. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, man. Let me know your thoughts in regards to those two players. Do you think it's worth just keeping them, maybe against their will? But do you think it's worth kind of keeping them going into next season? Or, because a lot of you have mentioned you want to sign this player, you want to sign that player, you want to sign this player, you want to sign that player. That's fine, but not everybody can be here and stay. There's only a finite amount of numbers you can actually have in a squad, right? Which is 25. So if all of these guys stay, what then happens moving forward, kind of thing. So I think that's important to kind of remember. But at the same time as well, do you also want players who don't really want to stay, kind of thing? It's like they're just here because they're here, kind of thing. Again, I don't really know, man. But for me, I would just sell them both. I think it's time. I think Liverpool need to move on as a football club. We hoard players like old ladies hoard, antique stuff. Like, it's just so weird. Like, I don't understand the reason why, and we're the first ones to complain when you're not going to sign the likes of a Yuri Tielemans on a cheap deal. That's the kind of midfielder that you bring into your team, But I feel like because you've got so many midfielders here now, it would be pointless. But for me, I'm like, nah, you just sign them and then you just put pressure on everybody else. Do you know what I'm saying? It tells everybody else, right, it's my place. Yeah, no, you're not guaranteed. All right, you want to leave? Then you can go. You know what I'm saying? Because of what we're trying to build here. I don't know, man. Maybe that's just the way I look at things and the way I'd probably do things. But that's the reason why I'm talking to you guys and I'm not behind the scenes sorting out the deals, man. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section in regards to both of those two players. Keep, sell, loan, whatever. Let me know your thoughts. Keep the same energy. Stay blessed. I will catch you guys soon.